And here we are, he's gone himself. This could win him the Tour of Britain. Oh my goodness me, look at that ball. He's left the rest for dead. Here they come into the closing stages. Those weary legs, he asks for a little more power. Oh, it was so close.
Hello, just 6 seconds separates first from second, and 6 seconds is as long as it took for me to tell you that. This is the man who knows the value of every single one of those 6 seconds. Geoffroy Lecatre launched his assault back on Exmoor on Tuesday, took yellow the following day and has been toughing it out ever since. Now, they want to find out what he's made of.
It's the last real stage where it's going to make a difference. It's a sprint after 55k, so give it some over the top.
If I was going for the stage win, it's possible that the winning move could go in the first kilometre.
As soon as it's hard, I'm just going to go. Just going to go.
I'm not going to take seconds in the bunch sprint at the end, so I need to get the group down, whittle it down on the climb.
For me, the climbs are going to be priority.
We're just going to try. We're going to attack all over the place.
We've had somebody in the top 4 on every stage so far. Hopefully we can pull it off today.
Just take the race as it comes, and when the opportunity is there, I'm going to stick it to them.
Welcome to Glasgow. The roads head south from here, where the race will, in all likelihood, be decided. Stage 7 contains the highest hill climb of the whole tour and then finishes downhill into Drumlanrig Castle. Yesterday in Darlington, the race went all Geordie.
You know where we're going today, son?
I think we're going to Newcastle, aren't we? Aye, today like we're going down Quayside. We'll see Millennium Bridge.
The irony being that Chris Newton actually comes from the northeast. It was going to be hard yesterday to pull the race apart, a flat and fast track out of Darlington, but Pete Williams, Evan Oliphant and Bradley McGee powered off the front and were chased then by Diego Caccia, who, as his name suggests, tried to catch him, and he did. Agricubel controlled the race behind, Garmin picked up the chase, and as the rain fell, the roads grew greasy and Caccia fell victim. McGee tried to time trial his way over the final few kilometres into Newcastle, but they caught him too, and it all came together for the big finale.
Hales is leading, the line is getting ever nearer. Pataki takes his second stage victory.
So a little shuffling of the GC order as the bunch came over the line in bits and pieces. A few riders missed a split of 5 seconds and handed a little time to Lecatre as a consequence. Ian Stannard, Gabriele Bossiccio and Dan Fleeman all losing out and dropping down. But everyone, as far down as Frederick Feuchelen in 8th, will feel that one move might just do it. So Paul Manning, a few guys lost a bit of time yesterday, but nothing in theory that they can't make back today. The problem is, how on earth are they going to do it? You've been out and about talking to them. What's the plan?
Yeah, I'm speaking to some of the riders today. There's quite a difference of opinion on how hard the route is going to be, and a few different approaches of how they're going to try and get that time back. Some of the guys say they're going to go on the attack. You know, it's going to be a really hard day out there, twisty roads, hard conditions, and they're just going to have to go for it. And other guys think that some of the climbs are going to be the main feature of the day, and that's where they're going to get the time. But I think it may even just come down to the little slight incline towards the finish at the castle today. That may be where it's won and lost.
Well, we saw the bunch split yesterday by 5 seconds. That could well happen again today if they're riding hard. A lot of guys were hoping for strong winds today. It's grey and murky, but it ain't windy.
Not windy, but you're never out on the hills. It's a really twisty route today, taking us down through the hills. So that might be enough to break up a tired peloton.
It's very unpredictable. It's going to be chaotic out there today, really, isn't it?
It is. I'm really looking forward to today. Should be great.
Excellent. Well, this tour seems to get more and more competitive each year, and so does the media scrum. It's not just us who are asking the riders questions. There are some people out there who aren't even old enough to pour a pint.
I say on day 6 of the tour.
More from those guys later, and let's hope they're good, but not that good. This is how Stage 7 looks from Glasgow. They climb straight out of town to Nurston, pick up 2 sprints and 1 more Category 3 climb before hitting the bottom of the Category 1 Mennock Pass, where you can almost guarantee attacks. After that, it twists and turns over damp country roads before a tasty uphill kick to the finish line at Drumlanrig Castle. And these are some of the sights of Glasgow the riders will barely notice as they shoot out of the city and straight up the nearest hill they can find, leaving behind them what I believe is known in the tourist guides as a blend of the modern and the traditional. From there it's into the rolling hills of Dumfries and Galloway, before Drumlanrig Castle flies the checkered flag. Well, the Tour of Britain is about to switch on its particle accelerator and throw out a peloton beam in the direction of the Mennock Pass. Let's get out and join our commentators Hugh Porter and Anthony McCrossan.
The Right Honourable, the Lord Provost of Glasgow, Robert Winter, starts the riders off for the penultimate stage of the Tour of Britain, a distance of 95 miles to the magnificent Drumlanrig Castle. The city of Glasgow will be hosting the 2014 Commonwealth Games, and what a poignant day this is. It's the 50th birthday of the Tour de France King of the Mountains, Robert Miller, who hails from the city and was the last British winner of this home tour. Yellow jersey Geoffroy Lecat and his Agra Toubel team have 163 miles left to defend their 6-second advantage over Great Britain's Steve Cummings of Barlow Whirl, who has not managed to give the Frenchman the slip to date. Well, this stage presents an opportunity for riders lowly placed in the overall classification to try and slip away to cover themselves in glory.
Heavy clouds ahead, the temperature is about 15 degrees centigrade, so the riders all wrapped up against the cold. And you mentioned Robert Miller there at the start. There was a photograph opportunity with David Miller and Evan Oliphant, actually with some of Robert Miller's old jerseys, in fact his polka dot jersey from the Tour de France.
Well, of course, Robert Miller is arguably the greatest stage race rider from our country of all times, King of the Mountains in all 3 major tours, and he finished 4th in the Tour de France and runner-up in the Vuelta and the Giro.
Well, we're heading towards the first King of the Mountains of today's stage, up to Nurston, and an early skirmish here at the front. Looks like Dean Downing in the move for the Rafa Condor recycling team.
Well, they haven't had much time to get the legs warmed up because this first climb comes at 4.1 miles. It's only a third category affair, but today is a day where all the riders are going to try and put their markers down for the classifications. They always call the penultimate day of any stage race the day of selection, where everybody tries to defend their positions.
Well, here's a man who is used to riding at the front for his teammates, and this time going on the attack, maybe to try and set things up for the Team CSC Saxo Bank. Chris Anker Sorensen, look at the face, and we're only a few miles into the stage, in fact 4 miles covered, and he's powering along at the front. He won a stage of the Giro d'Italia this year.
And Sorensen has got Blanco in his will, David Blanco, former winner of the Tour of Portugal. Also caught a glimpse of Stephen Gallagher there from On Post. And inevitably, right up near the front is Danilo De Luca, who is out to try and get some points in the King of the Mountains today. He started 10 points behind the overall leader in that competition, that's Ben Swift. But De Luca is going to try and narrow that gap down. Believe me, Christian House is also lying second on the same amount of points as De Luca, who you can see enveloped in the middle of this little group that's slipping away.
Well, it's nice to see Kim Kirchen here at the front, the Luxembourg champion, the winner of the Flèche Wallonne and also the Maillot Jaune this year in the Tour de France. For the first time, really, we're seeing him on the attack. Sorensen now going for the top of the climb, and if you just have a quick glimpse, the killer Danilo De Luca having to really grit his teeth to try and get these points.
And coming up into the wheel of De Luca is young Johnny McAvoy, the Liverpool lad who is, of course, part of the development squad of Great Britain. And look at that. Young McAvoy looks back and thinks, what a scalp I've taken there for the first mountain climb. McAvoy takes the 4 points from De Luca, Sorensen third, and Impey coming in fourth.
So we're going to go down the descent into the murk of the rain clouds in the front of us, and here is Dean Downing at the back. But look at Rob Hales. Rob Hales on fire here at the front, powering across. They want to keep this race together, the Great Britain team.
Well, they certainly need to pull that group back, because otherwise Ben Swift's leading the King of the Mountains is going to be under severe pressure. There's going to be lots and lots of action today, so don't go away. Join us again after this. Well, back to the action, and the little group that you saw before we went to the ad break has been caught and wiped away. There's been several other skirmishes, but this now is a little group of riders trying to get clear as we're approaching the first sprint of the day at Glespin.
Well, the pace in the peloton still very high. They're quite heavy roads. There's Geraint Thomas, recovered from his early problems yesterday, and Tom Southam just next to him. Can see the faces of concentration. They know that today is the decisive day of this race. This is the breakaway, and they look workmanlike.
And 24 miles under the wheels now, 2 from the Columbia team, and a rich mix, in fact, of different squads. Bosun Hagen is here again. What a rider this fella is. He's got Greg Henderson from New Zealand with him. Impey, I caught a glimpse of Impey from Barlow World. One of the Rock Racing team are there. Fred Rodriguez, big sprinter. Julian Dean from Garmin Chipotle. Matthew Goss, Daniel De Luca and Meyer, as we got a glorious shot of some of the countryside that we are racing through today. And Agra Tubel in their usual place, right on the front of the bunch, just towing them along, looking after that yellow jersey, who of course is getting ever nearer the victory in Liverpool. That's Geoffroy Lecat.
Well, this gap is starting to grow and the riders are working extremely well through some pretty dramatic countryside here, with the mountains left and right of them, and as you can see, the road conditions keep changing. We're moving from pretty heavy roads to patches of red road as well, and Bosun Hagen on the back. Can he do the unthinkable and win 3 stages in this race? De Luca just in front of him. Do you know what, if he goes all the way to the finish, Danilo De Luca, he'll have been in breakaways during this race for nearly 200 miles, which would be almost a third of the distance covered.
That underlines the quality of this man, who of course sits on the bike there and makes it look so easy. He's not a very big fella, but he has so much power. He punches well above his weight, particularly on the climbs. Well, this workmanlike group is starting to get themselves organised here, and this lead is beginning to stretch out all of the time. And there's no danger man in here for the yellow jersey. The highest placed rider is Bosun Hagen, the Norwegian. He's 22nd, but he's almost 12 minutes behind. And he's got his teammate here as well, Henderson.
Well, you can tell the 2 riders apart. Just look at the yellow shoes of Bosun Hagen. That's the way you can pick him out compared to Greg Henderson. Nice and easy to do that. And you'll notice, if you look very closely, he's got the Norwegian flag on those shoes. Custom-made shoes for Bosun Hagen.
Agra Tubel continuing then to pull the field along. Vergondi sitting in 2nd position, the French national road champion. And an armchair ride for the yellow jersey, and that is Lecat sitting 5th back here. But this is the leading group, a workmanlike group now, who are going about the job in hand, looking for a possibility of a stage victory and also scooping up points along the way. Now then, if De Luca was to pick up another 4 points here, he would have narrowed the gap right down to just 3 behind Ben Swift in the King of the Mountains competition.
Well, everyone's been saying that Ben Swift has pretty much got this King of the Mountains competition sewn up. He's been looking great on the climbs, but Great Britain have got an awful lot to worry about here. They've got to protect Ian Stannard's 5th position overall, and of course Ben Swift's overall lead in the King of the Mountains competition. I wonder whether they've let this break go and it's going to cause some problems. Glasgow Sprint is 1 kilometre away.
Well, the problem they've got here is for Ben Swift, because he's losing points every time they get to the King of the Mountains. Now, this first hotspot sprint of the day is getting ever nearer. Greg Henderson is in this little cluster of riders. Matt Goss, Julian Dean's there as well, another good sprinter, and Daniel De Luca is the man that's out to try and get more points in this.
Well, I'm wondering what Danilo De Luca's doing here, because he's taken Edvald Bosun Hagen off the back.
Well, I can tell you exactly what he's doing. It's a cute little move, because if the points are gathered by these riders ahead, it means the position overall in that hotspot sprint competition won't change, because at the start of the day, De Luca had got a 4-point advantage over Bosun Hagen. OK, there's 2 more sprints to go, but that was a good tactic there by the wily Italian. So the situation in that sprint, it was Henderson first, Goss second, Dean third, and Impey fourth. So the big players didn't score any points.
81 kilometres now to go to the finish of today's stage. The showdown is set on the horizon. Of course, we'll go over the Crawford John climb, the 3rd category climb into Sankar, and then it's the Menok Pass.
The Menok Pass is the biggest climb on today's stage. It is a 1st category rated ascent, and it's 10 points to the first competitor at the summit.
It takes us up to about 420 metres above sea level. The next climb is about 300 metres above sea level. It's not so tough, this one. This is a short, sharp little rise, and De Luca, that familiar style that we've got so used to over the last few days, at the front, setting a high tempo.
And he's obviously aware that if he can pick up the points at the top of the next 2 climbs, he will then take over the leadership in the Eon King of the Mountains. So this is the day I've sought out, as I said early on, and it's already beginning to reflect.
Well, the terrain, you'll notice, is suiting the power climbers like Julian Teen. He's a sprinter normally, but he's getting up this climb all right. Fred Rodriguez at the front of the Rock Racing team. Do you know, he's thriving in this race. He's thoroughly enjoying the atmosphere of the crowds at the starts and the finishes and all the way along the route. So Rodriguez setting a tempo. And what he's doing here, because he's not a climber, he's setting a pace that he's comfortable with so that everyone else can stay in the wheel.
Nice relaxed style there of Matthew Goss in the colours of CSC Saxo Bank. He's been a man in the action here in this tour, winning a stage. And look at Bosun Hagen there, this 21-year-old. What a future he's got ahead of him. And I remember the quote early on in commentary by Roger Hammer that they said he may one day win the Tour de France, and I think that's right. Now, what's going on here? We've got Daniel De Luca just dangling off the back. I think he's gathering himself, actually, ready for an attack to try and pick up the maximum points at the top here of Crawford John.
Danilo De Luca is one of those riders, interestingly, he never uses a race radio. He doesn't like to be controlled. He's one of those riders who likes to set things out himself, and he's having some fun today. As if it isn't hard enough, De Luca goes to the back now. He's riding through to the front, and he's going to go across the top of the climb to take the points.
And he does, so that's another very useful 4 points. Ben Swift's lead in the Eon King of the Mountains is evaporating with every pedal rev by De Luca. So De Luca picks up 4, Henderson second, Goss third, and Meyer coming over fourth. The other places are totally academic. They're not in the competition for the King of the Mountains, but this fella is. He's only 3 points now shy of the tally held by Ben Swift. And remember, the first man to the top of the Menach Pass gets 10.
79.8 kilometres to go, the gap 6:59.
And Rachel Phillips is in the heart of the 120,000 acre Queensbury estate on the steps of the beautiful Drumlanrig Castle.
Well, today's stage finish is at the stunning Drumlanrig Castle, and this is a landmark that the peloton will be very familiar with, because in last year's race, Frenchman Romain Feyou gained 3 vital bonus seconds in the sprint here, which ultimately gave him overall victory by just a single second. But as you can see for yourselves, it really is a spectacular setting. It was built in the 17th century. It spreads over 90,000 acres of land and is home to the Duke of Buccleuch. Well, here to tell us a little bit more about it is head ranger Richard Riley. Richard, it really is a magical place, isn't it? And lots for people to do here today.
It is, it's a fantastic place. The public can come to Drumlanrig and enjoy a whole host of activities. They can walk in our network of Victorian paths. We have, miles and miles of single track mountain bike trails as well as cycle trails for all the family.
And as I said, it spreads across 90,000 acres. As head ranger, you've got a job on your hands, haven't you?
It's a fairly extensive estate, yes, and we do invite the public to come and use all that estate for whatever recreational purposes they deem fit.
OK, well, it'll be a little while before the peloton reach here, but to see how they're progressing, let's go back to Hugh and Anthony.
Thanks very much, Rachel. The race continues here at quite a pace, and we're getting ever near to sprint number 2 at Sankar.
Well, the rider's working well. Julian Dean goes through to the front. And here is the 1 kilometre to go to the sprint. Cameron Meyer on the front here of the group. Of course, his brother was in the breakaway a couple of days ago.
Well, there he is right on the front. This talented Norwegian, Bosun Hagen. And the difference between him and De Luca in the sprint competition, who's choosing this moment to take a drink, is 4 points. Now then, can Bosun Hagen outwit De Luca here to narrow the gap down in that particular competition?
Freddie Rodriguez at the front, a man who has also got a coffee brand in the United States which invests in young riders as well.
Greg Henderson is the man in the blue colours for the Columbia team, the Kiwi who will be looking after the interests of Bosun Hagen in the sprint if he came to a lead out at the finish. Meanwhile, back at the head of the bunch, we've still got the Agritubel team pulling the group along with the yellow jersey inevitably just comfortably back in 4th and 5th position.
You'll notice that the Barlow World team are starting to move towards the front of the peloton. If they want Steve Cummings to win this race, they're going to have to really drive it into the bottom. Here's the sprint. De Luca starts to go now.
Now then, De Luca trying to outwit Bosun Hagen, and Bosun Hagen comes to the front. What happened there? De Luca seemed to falter. Whether he judged the distance to the line wrong, I don't know. But the Norwegian has just gone off easily here now, and he's going to pick up 5 valuable points Now then, where's DeLuca going to finish? If he comes in second, he'll get 3, and that means the gap between those two in that sprint competition is now down to 2 with one more sprint to go. Yes, DeLuca does come over the line second.
DeLuca is getting a real following along the course. Here's confirmation of the result. Bosenhagen wins that one ahead of DeLuca. And now they relax and let the group come back to them. I just noticed there, Hugh, that DeLuca has got a little bit of an injury today. You'll notice the pink tape on his knee.
Well, we've got 2 intriguing competitions here that are likely to change hands before the end in Drumlanrig Castle.
Well, we're approaching the feed now, and the gap is still about 7 minutes, so the chase behind is not really eating into this lead at all. As we see Fred Rodriguez go through, they'll be collecting their musettes, fueling up, ready for the big climb of the day.
And that big climb of the day takes them up to the top of the Mennock Pass, and just near the top of the Mennock Pass is Wanlock Head, which is the highest village in Scotland. A lot of lead mines around that area.
Well, the spray really coming off the roads now. It's not going to be a nice place to be in the middle of that peloton. You've got to keep the rain out of your eyes so you can see where you're going. But Agra Tubel wrapped up against the cold, many of them with their knee warmers on, setting a strong pace. Stephen Kotoven at the front.
Well, Drumlanrig's association with the bicycle goes back to 1839, actually, when a local blacksmith, Kirkpatrick Macmillan, attached some pedals to his wooden hobby horse, thus creating the first ever bicycle.
Well, here is the feed. Greg Henderson grabs his musette and he's going to have a look in there and see what sort of food he's got ready for the last few miles of this very important stage, and the decisions to be made on the various competitions. Kotoven still at the front.
It certainly is going to be an intriguing run into the finish. That last sprint in Thornhill, when the points are at stake for the hotspot sprint competition, is going to be something to watch. Don't go away, join us after this.
You're watching the Tour of Britain.
We're here today in Scotland.
It's stage 7.
Stay tuned for all the action.
Meet the press gang. They're at the start of every stage, the end of every stage, and at every press conference in between. But who exactly are they? Well, they're a group of 13 to 16-year-olds getting first-hand experience of life as a sports journalist. They spend all week grilling the peloton, and they work long into the night.
They're put into situations that everyday journalists are put into, and they're treated like journalists. They know that they've got a deadline to meet and they make it. Things are being put online every day after the race, and they're doing a great job.
I'd definitely like to see them back again in the future. One of the nice things about the Tour of Britain is that it's been one of the things that helps to bring through a lot of the new young talent in cycling in the UK. So to have that sort of mirrored in the journalistic side of things is fantastic.
All of the footage acquired at this year's tour will be broadcast on the Radio Waves website, and it's hoped by the 2012 Olympics the project will have nurtured a new generation of journalistic talent. Well, for the moment I'm still in a job, but I tell you what, guys, I think our days are numbered.
The 8 leaders on the lower slopes of the Mennock Pass, which is approximately 6 miles long. It ramps up gradually.
Well, that time gap is still 7 minutes, so the amount of work that's being done at the back is not changing the lead again as we head through to the start of the King of the Mountains, and this breakaway working well together. What is going to be interesting, however, are the teams behind them. Who is going to start to do the driving to the base of this important climb of today's stage?
Well, really the driving is not important. If they keep the gap pegged at this distance, then the yellow jersey, providing Cummings can't get away from Lecat, will remain the same. It's all about these other 2 classifications being rejigged. That's the King of the Mountains and the Hotspot Sprints competition. Now DeLuca, if he finishes 5th or higher at the summit of this climb, could end up completing a very fruitful day, because it would mean he would be in the lead in the Eon King of the Mountains competition. And with only 3 gradual ascents tomorrow in Liverpool, which are rated 3rd category, and that means there's only 4 points if you win them, then DeLuca will be marking Ben Swift throughout the stage.
Well, if we think back to the peloton and the riders who are placed behind the yellow jersey, Stephen Cummings, of course, who will be looking to try and take the jersey, and Dan Martin of Garmin Chipotle, you have to pick your moment on this climb. We've talked about the gradual steps up. Well, there are little descents as well, and therefore you've got to use the uphill sections of this climb to capitalise on your lead, if in fact you have one. Back here to the leaders again, you can see the climb in distance, and the clouds are pretty low.
It's the kind of climb where the cadence will be kept high, and what I mean by that is that the riders will be in the outside chain wheel, that's the big chain wheel, keeping a high rhythm. Speed is reflecting all the time here in this glorious scenic part of the world.
Now, the other difficult part of this climb is the fact that we go over the King of the Mountains. Then there's a fast descent down to the area of Lead Hills, but then it kicks up again. So you've got to try and recover in time to go over a very tough little ascent before the descent down towards the finish. Geraint Thomas, one of our gold medalists from Beijing, setting an extremely fast tempo now, and this is trying to set things up, possibly for an attack from Cummings.
So Barlow World obviously working to a game plan here, and Geraint Thomas just looking back to see who he's dragging along. He's a young man from Cardiff who has completed the Tour de France and the Tour of Italy, and let's not forget, when he was a junior he won the Paris-Roubaix. So Geraint Thomas is another young fellow with a big future, but the leading group getting ever nearer the top here of the mountain, and De Luca will be licking his lips at the thought of grabbing points in his bid to become the leader in that classification. Just under 50 kilometres remaining, and that lead is coming down.
This lead is coming down extremely quickly, but look at this, there are riders all over the place. Big Magnus Backstedt set a prolific pace up there to try and set things up for Dan Martin, but Geoffroy Lecat is still looking strong. Look at Backstedt, you'll notice how quickly he's going to the rear of the peloton here. But riders moving up, the LPR team looking quite vigilant, but look at Stephen Cummings now. This is his moment to try and take the yellow jersey and ride towards the Wirral tomorrow.
So Cummings now throwing the gauntlet down and distancing himself then from the field. Lecat is behind, so on the road, if you timed that, it would be about 3 seconds, but as Cummings got the firepower in his legs to get over the top, engage the big gear and then stop the Agritubel team chasing him down. Cummings having a go then to try and become the winner here of this Tour of Britain. It's showdown time on this, the penultimate stage. Steve Cummings, former world champion for the team pursuit, is really motoring.
Well, he has said all week that this is the day, this is the moment that he's got to go on the attack. His dream is to take the yellow jersey towards home, and he is doing everything he can to try and clinch it. This is a supreme performance from Cummings now, and this is the breakaway looking relaxed.
Bosenhagen on the front there, Matt Goss on his left. Two youngsters, no doubt thinking about the finish and the sprint. Who's he going to go to? Well, we've still got quite a way to go, 45 kilometres in fact, but they're working very, very smoothly all the time. Fred Rodriguez, just on the left of our screen, from the Rock Racing team, this 35-year-old American. I tell you what, he could pack a punch as well in the closing stages if it comes to the sprint.
Well, let's just think back to the base of the climb. It was 7 minutes the advantage. Here is Fredrik Voichelen, another rider who is highly placed, 8th place overall, 28 seconds down on the general classification. And Voichelen this morning was looking confident at the start, and now he powers his way up towards the wheel of Steve Cummings.
Now, if they can link up, we've got a brace of strong riders here who are both bidding for overall victory. Now then, they could start to relay each other. Now, is this the move we've been waiting for? Have they finally given the Agritubel team the slip? Are the Agritubel team finally losing their control at the head of the main field?
Well, this is a fantastic race. We always said that the Menot Pass would be the point in the race that this Tour of Britain would be decided. Right, we now zoom down this little descent through a couple of corners, and then we're back onto the climb, the next step up. Voichelen being urged on into his ear through his race radio, but De Luca, look at this, he's going up the climb with his hands off the bars.
Well, Voichelen's had good performances before in the Tour of Britain. In fact, back in 2005 he finished 6th overall, so he obviously likes this race. But Cummings, he's going about the job in hand here like a master, the professional at his work at his job, and now he's got nobody behind him, and he's finding the good rhythm, turning a really good gear smoothly. Terrific effort here by then Steve Cummings.
Well, he has said that fourth place in the Giro d'Italia stage on Monte Pora has given him some great strength when the road goes upwards. Voicelin slowly but surely coming up to him. We're hearing now that the gap is 28 seconds back to the peloton.
So you're looking at the new leader on the road, but can he sustain this all the way to the finish? Cummings rode a magnificent time trial in Beijing. He was the fastest in the opening lap. He had one or two problems after that, but he really did show us what a rider he is against the clock, and he will be representing Great Britain in the time trial when we go to Varese in a couple of weeks in the World Championships. This is the moment then for Steve Cummings.
Well, he prepared last night. He went to bed very, very early and got a good night's sleep. He's so focused on trying to win this race in front of the British fans. Look at this, a lot of people on this climb. De Luca at the front, of course. Let's not forget here, Hugh, he's looking for King of the Mountains points, and he's looking cool as ever.
Absolutely, and he's got the jersey on as the leader of the King of the Sprints competition. That's another problem on his mind. The first problem here is to try and finish better than fifth, as I've already said, at the summit of this climb, and that would give him the lead in the King of the Mountains contest. Then he's got to watch Boasson-Hagen in the final sprint of the day in Thornhill to see whether he can hang on to the sprint classification as well. But he's just coming up ever nearer to the top. Slipped a gear there, I think, for a moment, as Rodriguez sportingly pushed him on.
Well, through the throngs of fans, and now we're at the top of the climb. The Eon King of the Mountains over the cattle grid, and De Luca takes the points and adjusts his shorts and the tape on his knees.
Confirmation of the result, and I can tell you now, those 10 points have now confirmed the new leader of the King of the Mountains, and it is Danilo De Luca.
Well, young Ben Swift now has been unseated from that jersey, so tomorrow when we race into Liverpool, it's going to be Danilo De Luca who will be the leader of the Eon King of the Mountains. Disappointment here for Great Britain.
He may well be the leader of the King of the Sprints as well, because at the moment he's leading that. He's got 20 points and Boasson-Hagen has got 18. That is going to go right down to the wire, as they say.
Frederick Voicelin is finding it extremely difficult to catch the fast-moving wheel of Steve Cummings, but now he finally gets there. Cummings out of the saddle. He is still the leader on the road. This is a stunning performance from this young man.
Nobody in sight behind now, then they need to settle down to the job in hand, get those big gears turning, work together consistently, because if they can keep this up, they're going to elevate themselves up the classification, and Cummings would be in yellow.
Well, we're on the descent now, and here is Alessandro Patacchi setting a furious pace down this descent. He is hooning his way towards the riders in front. The reason for that, of course, is he's protecting the advantage of Gabriel Bosisio, who is fourth place overall, 15 seconds down. He doesn't want Cummings to be up the road.
They're obviously hoping that Bosisio could pick up some bonuses along the way and get himself higher than Cummings.
So many of the teams playing their tactics out, and that could, well, in fact, here we go. Steve Cummings and Voicelin are caught.
And Lecat can breathe a sigh of relief, and we still do not know the final outcome of this stage. Well, they've been together for a long time now on this stage, and they're closing in on the sprint at Thornhill.
Well, remember, they attacked at the 24-mile mark. As we head to Thornhill, we'll have about 4 miles to go of this stage. So another long breakaway today, not the longest of this year's Tour of Britain, but it's certainly approaching it. And it's Boasson-Hagen in those yellow shoes at the front.
There's just 2 points separating Boasson-Hagen from De Luca, with De Luca leading this sprint competition. So if Boasson-Hagen snaps up the 5 points here and beats De Luca, then he is in a position to take over as the leader, and that is exactly what they're doing here. You can see that De Luca is trying to follow Boasson-Hagen, ready for the charge for the line.
Just noticed fast Freddie Rodriguez talking into his race radio there. He's looking for a little bit of information, and he is asking his team director to supply it. Goss goes up to the wheel now of Boasson-Hagen.
So Boasson-Hagen looks over to see who's coming through. It's Goss. They're gathering themselves for this sprint. Now it's Goss at the front. Casual style on the handlebars there of Rodriguez. He's not playing a part in this competition. It's all about the Italian and the rider from Norway, Bosenhagen. Getting ever closer to that line now. And Bosenhagen just on the right in second position. Are they going to sprint for it? There's a lot at stake here. If Bosenhagen snaps this one up and gets the 5, then De Luca, if he finishes second, means that they're dead level. And it'll have to go to count back where they finished in the sprints throughout the whole of the race. Well, as they crossed the line, Bosenhagen was first there for the 5, and second was De Luca for the 3. So that means they're both now on 23, and we'll have to look through where they finished in the sprints throughout the stages that have taken place before we know who is the leader on that competition.
Well, this chase now is firmly on with Agritubel, Great Britain, also at the front, but they are not eating into this advantage. The gap is going back out again, which is quite surprising. The attack of Steve Cummings and Frederick Voichelen, of course, was nullified, and now it's down to other teams to try and break the will of the peloton, but that's not happening. This Tour of Britain could come down to time bonuses tomorrow.
Well, time split has been confirmed at 3 minutes and 30 seconds as they were leaving Thornhill. Doesn't matter if it stays pegged at that, the yellow jersey will not change because the time bonuses on the line will be taken up by the breakaway group.
And now what you're seeing is Agritubel at the front as they head to the sprint in Thornhill, and all they're doing now is setting a nice high tempo to put off the rest of the teams from launching breakaways. They do have to be vigilant around here. There are some technical corners and the run-in as we loop round Drumlanrig estate.
So Agritubel keeping an eye out for anybody that's likely to jump clear. And Great Britain has a presence there in 4th position in the line, and Ian Stannard, if it remains like this, will still be 5th overall. But of course the big loser is Ben Swift in that King of the Mountains contest.
Interesting as we make the run into the finish that yesterday, of course, the riders lost some time. I talked to Dan Martin and he said some days you go on the attack, you try to get seconds, you don't get them, and then on the run into a finish there can be a split and suddenly you move up on the general classification. So again, tired riders at the end of this Tour of Britain, and they could leave gaps, so they've got to be careful.
Drumlanrig Castle awaits them, and I'm just wondering if Bosenhagen is going to nail this 3rd sprint victory. He's had 2 wins so far and a 3rd, and he really is the man of the match for me.
Vagondi at the front, you'll notice he's even now got French flag tape across his ear to hold his radio in. Everything matches with Vagondi, the French road race champion. Now let's just remember, we mentioned earlier on today that Danilo De Luca has been on the attack for most of this race. His performances in the various stages have been exceptional, and so many 3rd places. Can he get the win today? He's been on the attack now for nearly 30% of the Tour of Britain.
These are the narrow roads that lead to the line, just 3 kilometres remaining, and the cattle grids, of course, need to be negotiated carefully. There is no problem. Bosenhagen comes once again through to the front. Goss looks back. Goss, a big sprinter, he's got 1 stage win to his credit, and as you just mentioned, Anthony, De Luca is still searching for that top spot, and looks like 2 riders are starting to slip away here. Goss going for the long one, and in the wheel is Bosenhagen, and still with that strange style with his hands resting on the bars is Freddie Rodriguez.
Oh, Matt Goss and Bosenhagen, of course, both stage winners in this race. So Goss going for his 2nd stage win, Bosenhagen going for his 3rd, but De Luca is playing all sorts of games. Another attack here at the front. Who is this? And it's the rider from South Australia, Cameron Meyer, now going for gold.
Young Cameron Meyer now trying to give the rest the slip. 20 years of age, this fella on the AIS team, and this may just prove to be profitable. 2 kilometres remaining, and nobody at this moment is taking up the chase.
Look at this, he's powering his way across this magnificent scenery. It's a long straight road towards the finish, and the rest of the breakaway riders, there's no reaction. This could be a repeat of Emilien Burgess the other day.
So Cameron Meyer with his head down, has now got himself set up to try and win the stage. It would be a fairy tale finish for the youngster. It is a long approach, so he's cleared off and left the big guns for dead. What a move this is. Can he do it?
Well, drier roads now as he races in. He's got to be careful over that bridge. Back to the peloton, who are in full cry. Of course, we're looking to make sure there are no time splits in this group. Here are Great Britain on the front, leading things through, looking after Ian Stannard.
Now, just over 2 minutes behind the leading group, who at the moment are confused by the attack of this youngster, the youngest man in the break. It's coming down slowly. Very slowly. They are getting exceptionally close to the 1 kilometre to go sign.
Look at this, the gap is not closing at all. There is nobody bringing this young rider back. This would be a stunning victory for the South Australia team. Remember, Matt Goss, who's in this group, started with the South Australia squad. He wore one of the jerseys of the Tour of Britain a couple of years ago when he rode for them before he turned professional for CSC. Look at this.
It was actually the yellow jersey, and he had to retire because he had a knee problem. But now then, is that gap going to be good enough to give him the victory? The group behind is beginning to fragment as the pressure is lifting significantly here, and it looks like Boasson Hagen with his typical power blowing the rest out of the wheel, and Boasson Hagen is closing right up onto the wheel of Meyer. This is exactly the same situation as in Stoke-on-Trent when he snapped up the victory in the closing stages. Look at the power of this rider from Norway on the Columbia team. His voracious appetite for victory continues here as he nails his third stage. What a ride. Second was Matthew Goss, and third Daniel Impey of the Barlow World team. Now who's going to get the sprint here at the head of the main field? It's Stuart O'Grady there of CSC Saxo Bank on the right that's raising the pace, but it looks as though he's going to be passed here by Lequat, the yellow jersey's challenging strongly as they near the line. Who's going to take it? In fact, they're both beaten to the line by the rider from Top Sport Flandrian, Christophe Goddard. So Lequat finishing there, he's safe in the yellow jersey as we move on to Liverpool.
And while tabloid headline writers hum wonderful Boasson Hagen to themselves, the self-effacing 21-year-old has no need of cliches to express an all too obvious talent.
I didn't expect to take 3 victories, so it's really good. I hope I will do one of the Grand Tours, and they don't know which, so we'll see.
You'd be a good lead-out man for Mark Cavendish. I think he'd appreciate having you around.
Yeah, that's...
so long as you don't win too many stages on your own, I guess.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, the riders continue to roll in. The yellow jersey in a group of 31, 2 minutes 18 down, and the final group finishing 11 minutes down, with double Olympic gold medalist Bradley Wiggins providing a neat counterpoint to his Columbia teammate by finishing stone last. But Boasson Hagen has been the star turn, 3 wins in 4, and don't forget his third place yesterday. A race within a race then, Boasson Hagen won the stage out sprinting Matt Goss and Daryl Impey. Meanwhile, Danilo De Luca swept up as many points as he possibly could in both the sprints and the mountains. But the big GC names cancelled each other out through a combination of gentle topography and plain bad luck.
I actually punctured 10k's before the climb and then got back. That wasn't really a problem, but then literally as we turned left onto the climb, my back wheel just exploded. So luckily Stephen Gallagher, my teammate, was next to me, so he gave me his wheel, and then they pushed me back, and I had to make a big effort just to regain the peloton.
There wasn't really much you could do out there. It was not windy enough, and the terrain wasn't really super hard, so yeah, a bit disappointing.
It was easier than what it looked like on the profile, and the roads were wide and the descents weren't technical, so it was difficult to get any time back.
It all leaves the GC unchanged, and with tomorrow's stage as flat as Fleeman's tyre, it would appear to be game over. So for Fayou in 2007, Reid Lecatre 2008, although with true never over till the final whistle caution, he's not popped the champagne just yet. Well, Paul, we did kind of flag that up. We sort of saw that coming, didn't we? The chasing pack just left it too late overall in this race.
Yeah, the stage proved not to be really hard enough. There's plenty of action on the Mennock Pass, but the British riders were just unable to get it together and distance the yellow jersey. And
a combination of bad luck as well with Dan Fleeman's puncture. It could have been different perhaps, but double disappointment as well today for Britain in the shape of Ben Swift losing his King of the Mountains jersey.
Yeah, it's a slim chance he may be able to seize that back tomorrow from Danilo De Luca, but I think he'll be up against it.
The problem is, as you say, he's up against Danilo De Luca, who's been on the attack every day, and alongside Alessandro Petacchi, his Italian teammate. I mean, they've just been outstanding. They haven't cracked a smile, have they? But boy, have they been professional.
They've looked serious, but they've come with a healthy respect for the race, a desire to prove they're back to their best and prove themselves to the national selectors with the Worlds just around the corner.
Can you see anyone beating Petacchi on that flat stage from Blackpool to Liverpool tomorrow?
It's going to be tough. I hear they're going to try and fly Cavendish in, but it could be round 3, Petacchi versus Hales.
Yeah, or Bosenhagen.
Possibly. Yeah, 4 wins. Who knows?
Yeah. It would be nice to see a British win, and you can find out on our coverage tomorrow on that final stage of the Tour of Britain, as I say, from Blackpool to Liverpool. In the meantime, it's goodbye from me, and it's goodbye from Paul Manning, Olympic gold medalist, and still the last British stage winner of the Tour of Britain. Hope that changes tomorrow.